How y'all doing? Welcome back to the next installment of The Enlightened Voice. I'm your host, Christopher. I'm gonna be walking today. You know, I got a little cool fit on. I got my camera out here, trying to take some nice pictures for y'all. You know, I'm gonna upload some shit later, but back onto our next installment for the most part. So, what I want to talk about this time while I take my little nature walks and whatnot, y'all see. For the most part, edibles. I want to talk to y'all about edibles, and I want to talk to y'all about smoking and how those two can kind of add up. So a question that I get a lot of, honestly, is what if I don't want to smoke and I just want to eat something and still be stoned in the same type of fashion? So what I tell people is it's a little bit harder because the smoking goes through the endocannabinoids in the brain. You feel me? So that's why it's kind of instantaneous. You smoke, hit it, maybe 5 minutes, boom, you high. So that's the easiest way. When you're eating an edible, for the most part, it's a much longer process, and most of my normal people would know this. Just to give y'all this view, that should look crazy, don't it, y'all? But people want to eat something and they want the same effect as what they just ate. Now, what I will tell you is, as far as Maryland dispensaries, there is nothing that I found besides 100 milligram capsules that will give you the same feeling like you smoked the blunt. Now, for all intents and purposes, I'm not going to get into the scientific the formulas and all that, because I feel like that would confuse a lot of people. What I will say is, let's say, to keep it minimal, let's say you take a gram, right? Take a gram of grass. I don't know, for all intents and purposes, let's say blackberry, and the THC is 31%. So you're going to get, I think it's 310 milligrams of THC inside your blunt. So you have to match that with the edible, but edibles hit differently. So these are the things that you got to look out for. If you're normally a smoker around, I want to say 20%, 25, maybe even in the high teens, then the edibles in Maryland should work for you. Granted, you're an avid smoker, like you're not smoking probably 3 or 4 times out the day. Because what we have in Maryland right now is they start you off with a micro dose, which they call, I think, 2.5, if I'm not mistaken on that. They call microdosing a 2.5 dose, and that's supposed to be the smallest dose that you'll actually be able to feel something. Then you go from 5 to 10 to 25, and then you kind of just shoot up to random numbers from there, because it kind of just depends on the strength level of what the person wants to do, the grower, the processor, anything like that. So what I'll tell people is, like me personally, just to give you a personal experience of mine, my Betty Zetties I enjoy a lot. They have like a taffy kind of consistency, so chew them up, kind of get them all down. I probably would take like 2 or 3, and they're 20 milligrams each. So about 60 milligrams is when I start to feel something. Now, it is nowhere near if I smoke the blackberry, a blunt of blackberry to myself. It's nowhere near that. I feel like you're going to have to match the numbers of the strain. And this is all biases for me, but you're going to have to match those numbers in the strain. So if you are smoking blackberry at 31%, like I said, that's 310 milligrams of THC within that 1 gram. You will then need an edible of the same caliber. So you're going to need something that's like 500 milligrams to get you to that same situation. Because, like I said, people will buy the little Verano, I forget what they're called like right now, but the little gummies, the little square gummies. They'll buy the Verano gummies, and then they'll take 2 or 3, and then they'll be nowhere near what they smoked. And like I said, I'll explain this to you guys. You gotta keep that level consistent. Now it's gonna hit differently. It's never gonna hit like the smoke hits. because you're either gonna get close to that crevice. You're either gonna get close to it by like, oh yeah, I feel it in my body, I feel good, I feel nice, I feel wavy, I feel like I'm doing stuff, but it's never gonna be the exact same high as the smoke. And that's what I want you guys to understand. Eating is honestly for different reasons. You don't wanna, honestly, unless you really can't smoke, then I would say, of course, eat an edible. If you want to kind of keep it untraceable, of course, then the edible will be the best thing for that. But you got vapes and things of that nature, but that's another video, because I do not like vapes. I don't think humans understand how terpenes work, and we will never be able to mimic how marijuana works. And that's why I think vapes don't work as well. But that's another video. So back to my edibles. So now that we talked about the difference of the strength, the difference in the, why you would take an edible, like I said, there's no trace, you can eat it. Let's say you got to take a flight. Smoking is instantaneous, as you guys know. So if I'm smoking a blunt, I'm probably going to smoke this blunt, and then my high is going to be gone somewhere between 2 to 3 hours for me personally, a little bit longer if your tolerance is not as high. But if you're eating it, it has to process through your liver. And that is what takes so long, because it has to go through, you eating it, then your stomach digesting it. Then finally, when it hits your liver, that is when it'll start to actually take effect, and you'll start to feel the feelings. And that can take about 30 to 45 minutes for the most part. And all the time, it kind of, like I said, just kind of depends on what you're wanting to do. If I gotta take a flight, then that sounds good. I could probably do that. I could probably, eat the edible, go on the plane, and then call it a day from there. Like, I'll start to feel it, or I'll take a nap, or whatever the situation. But, like I said, if I'm just, I don't know. And it can be a number of reasons. Let's say you're about to go to a party and you want a pregame. Boom. That's a reason to take an edible right there. Long as it's the right strain. You still must, and that's another thing people do not pinpoint enough. And this is the reason that, I don't think they have edibles as far as I know, but tinctures, Liberty's tinctures, by far, I like them the best. And I don't even say they're the best quality. The only reason I choose to like them more is because of the profile that they give you on the product. Like, it tells you the strain that went into the tincture. It tells you the terpenes. I don't need something that's going to tell me you're going to feel energized, because then that's partly placebo effect. I'm putting that in there. Like, oh, this is going to make me feel energized. If I give you a strain, your understanding of that strain is then whatever placebo effect you put on it. But then I feel like when you say, hey, I gotta feel energized, this box says energy, let me get that, you're just adding a placebo effect, and you're expecting it to work. But you should want to understand your cannabis a little bit more in depth than that, was what I'll say. So, like I said, we talked about the times you should use them, any time where you gotta wait, the difference between the smoking and the tinctures. And the tinctures are a little bit different than the edibles, because I granted both sublingually, but the tinctures get absorbed in the moral mucosa. I don't know how to say that word correctly. I need to look this up. But it gets absorbed in here, and then you kind of swallow the rest. But most of it is absorption in your mouth area type situation. So different tinctures will be faster, but so much weaker, because they're just not as strong. As in, I can put way more cannabis inside of a edible than I probably could put in a tincture. But again, that's more of a bias. I'm not entirely sure about that. I've just never seen tincture. I don't think tinctures are made to be super strong. If you want something super strong, if you are on tinctures, you will probably graduate to a vape, or you will probably graduate to just smoking, honestly, or an edible too. But yeah, so comparisons. Edibles are much longer. Because they do last a lot longer. Like, your high from smoking is gonna last you maybe anywhere around, like I said, 2 to 3 hours for me. If you're not an avid smoker, then maybe I want to give it like 3-4 hours at the most. And that is where your edible will start Like, you're going to be high for at least 3 or 4 hours, 4 to 5 if your tolerance is lower, and longer depending on how much you've eaten. So, and other than that, I think that's all the information I wanted to give you guys. I'm going to definitely come out with some new strains. I'm not entirely sure. I really need to do Tropical Sunset because I don't think Evermore is growing Thin Mints anymore. So they kind of might fall off as my favorite grower, honestly, just behind that move itself. And everybody seems focused on these vapes, which, like I said, I just personally don't like because they don't, like I said, humans don't understand how terpenes work. And if you have to reintroduce terpenes into something, that's where the human error comes in. But as far as our edibles, whatever you're usually smoking, match that with the amount of milligrams that are inside the edible. So if I'm used to smoking a 25% strain and a gram of that, then you will want to get an edible that's going to be about 250 milligrams per. That's what I'm getting with. If you want to mimic the smoking high as close as you can, as close as you possibly can. Now, this isn't for just like, oh, you just want to get your body a little wavy, because then you can go to 25 milligrams or 50 milligrams. Like I said, I feel something at 60 milligrams when I take the Betty's Eddies. So to me, it kind of just depends on, and pinpoint the high you are looking for. Also, another bias of mine, I personally feel like if you don't want to just go to the dispensaries and buy edibles, you don't just want to go to the dispensaries and whatever they have, the cookies, cakes, and pies, if that's what they put out. Personally, I believe savory things will be so much better with weed. If you think about it in the term of weed as a herb, what do you put herbs into? We don't put herbs into cookies. You don't put herbs into brownies and candies. No, you put herbs into savory dishes. Shrimp scampi, chicken Alfredo, all of these different things. I'm not a cook, so that's the only two I could think of. But all of these things are the things that you think about when you're putting herbs, when you're adding some oregano, when you're adding some basil. So if you look at marijuana as that type of thing, it's a herb, then you will start to put it in different things. I feel like we just like sweets, and that's the reason that we decide, hey, I'm gonna make this candy to be able to get me high, because something sweet and getting me high is amazing. But I have not tasted anything, maybe besides the dispensary things like the little gummies, the Betty's Eddies, but even then, I have not tasted an edible that has not tasted of weed. And that is not something that I want to taste, because sweets and weed don't really mix well. Like, weed does not taste sweet unless you make it like purple punch, but that's just smoking it and that's sweet. I don't know if that taste is going to correlate to be sweet. So let's say, for all intents and purposes, you don't want to go into the dispensary and buy an edible. You want to make your own. So you go decarb. That's another video, of course, too, how teach you guys how to do that. But that's all the way, that's everywhere on the internet. That's not really something that I really need to explain. But hey, just go there, buy it, decarb it, and then put it in scampi, put it in something savory. I don't know, the only place that I've known that has some type of cooking is Charm City Medicus, which is on the east side of Baltimore. That's the only place that I've known that has some type of cooking, and they do like savory dishes. So I would say look into that if you're interested. But honestly, just try savory dishes. Just decarb the weed, put it in the oven, make sure when you eat it, it'll still get you high, because there are so many people that believe if they eat raw weed, it is going to get you high. And that is not true. That is false, sir. You are eating weed for no purpose. That bud you just ate out your blunt, not going to do shit for your high. That keef that you just put on something, not going to get you high. Unless you decarb your weed by heat. Because I was about to go into some more other shit. Heat, basically. Nigga, how I light my blunts, that's the heat. That's turning that THCA to THC. The same thing goes with weed that you need to cook into something. Whether if you're cooking it into a butter or something like that, then that's a little bit easier, because then the butter, you know, you're already making the basis of it, and all you're gonna have to do is like put the butter and substitute the can of butter for regular butter. I mean, substitute the regular butter for can of butter. But other than that, if you're gonna actually like put it straight up in it, you gotta decarb it. And like I said, just it's a little harder to match though, because let's say if you put your can of butter in some cookies, for all intents and purposes, and you take a cookie and you eat one of these cookies and it's not as potent, it's not as strong, but you eat another cookie and get fucked up. That's the only reason it's really hard to gauge edibles as much, unless you like you have a dispensary or something like that you can, you know, pinpoint these things. You know, you can make sure you know, make sure they'll know exactly what's going into it, how to process into it. When you're doing it at home, it's a little bit harder to gauge that, and you won't know how each cookie's hit, because you won't know how much THC technically is in this particular piece of cookie. Because for all intents and purposes, you might have like swirled your butter all around, make sure it was perfectly even, but for some reason a whole bunch of THC sitting over here in this side of the cookie pan, and this side of the cookie pan got, like, you know, not much less. So I get it. I get some people want to go home and cook it themselves, but just, you know, if you're doing that, then it's a little bit easier to know what high you're gonna get, because you know the strain. But other than that, I think that's about it. I feel like that's my video for the day. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you guys learned something about the edibles versus the smoking, even a little bit of tinctures. But I'm gonna come out with another video for tinctures and vapes, and I'll give you my little biases, more of my biases on vaping, like, you know, the weed pens and all of that good stuff. Aside from all of the crazy stuff that I've been hearing, but I've heard it's not anything to do with weed vapes, more like those big bulky vapes that people put the juice in themselves. But you guys have a wonderful day. I'm Christopher Bright, and this is The Enlightened Voice.